What is up, guys? It is Niles, and we are back working on my 87 Chevy S10. So previously we installed that small block Chevy and the Gearstar 4L60. And on that small block Chevy, we had this brand new Holley intake. It actually wasn't installed yet. It was mostly just on top of the engine to keep dust out. But now that the engine is in and the transmission is locked down, we can finally install that intake. So quick walk around of this piece. This actually just came out a couple months ago. I saw it for the first time at SEMA 2024, and it is really nice. There's two versions of this. There's the high ram, and then this is the front feed version. This is the more hood friendly one. This is designed to clear the hoods for Camaros and Firebirds, but I think it'd be perfect for this S10. And I'll put it next to a normal intake and air filter just so you can see the height comparison. There is one issue though so far. So right here, it is contacting the valve cover. So as you can see, the valve cover is not closing completely. So we're actually gonna have to grind this intake. So I'm gonna get a marker and just mark that area because we're gonna have to grind it slightly. Now, I've seen people install this on other small block Chevys with aftermarket heads, and there is no issue. I honestly think it's just these stock heads. They're just really short. Aftermarket ones just have a little bit taller. So if you're running aftermarket heads, not a problem, but this might be something you have to do. Make sure. Okay. And because we're grinding, I'm gonna cover everything with this trash bag. Quick height comparison. So here is our brand new intake, and this is the intake that came with this engine, also just a spare Holley. They are pretty much the exact same height, and that is not even including an air cleaner. You could buy a lower profile intake. This one is a little bit tall, but I mean, just look at that. That is crazy. We could honestly have probably put the higher ram intake instead of this front feed one, but that is really cool. This intake can be disassembled now. Now with cutting this, I don't want to go too extreme, so I marked out about 1/4 of an inch off of here, just so that there's a lot of meat right there. So just so that there's a lot of meat between this runner and the side, so sealing won't be an issue. So I'm gonna do one side first, and then check this, and then if this side's good, then we'll cut the same for the other. That does look a lot better. So it is closer, but it is still hitting. Let's actually try this with a gasket. As far as gaskets go, we do have these really nice set from Moroso that they sent with their valve covers, but I already know this probably isn't gonna work. But let's just check. Yeah. Actually, maybe if we cut that O right there. Yeah, these are super nice from them, but where it's contacting is just right there. So I'm just gonna try cutting that off. Really cool. These gaskets have like a metal frame underneath, and so you can see a little bit of the portion sticking out, but it works. It actually fit on there. Goes right on. And it is sealed. So check that out. It is sealed on there. Beautiful, beautiful. It is very, very close right there, but I am not too worried. All right, and that finish is exactly what I was going for. One thing I didn't point out is I already pre-installed this Holley oil filter, or not oil filter, oil pressure sensor, and I had to buy this adapter. It's from Dakota Digital. Just otherwise, this would not fit in there. I'm putting it before the intake install just because this would be too hard to install with the intake on. Whoa, what the heck happened there? Okay. Okay, why the hell is there air pocket? Get these bolts started. For hardware, we're using these absolutely gorgeous 6-point stainless steel ARP bolts. So that went on pretty well. The bolts are just snugged down right now. I snugged them down in sequence. I'm gonna give the RTV about an hour to dry before I kind of like crank down on them a little bit. Now to seal the top lid for this, there's a groove right here. And they actually give us this O-ring material. And we're supposed to lay this in between here and then put the lid on top. So that's what I'm gonna do now. So they gave us actually a pretty long piece. Here we go. And this. These did come with some hardware of its own, but because we're using ARP hardware, we got these. These packs of 5 are the exact same length as the original ones, and we're going to be using these. And for those of you wondering, there is a torque sequence for this intake lid, but we are also not going to be installing it fully yet. We want to make sure these 2 flanges are exactly lined up. So for this intake, there was a bit of wiggle between this top cover and this base, and after installing the gasket, they recommend just cutting it. But what I did first was actually install this offset slightly. And luckily these 2 bolt holes lined up, but just so that there's a flat plane between there. So I know that these guys are pretty much perfect. So now I'll tighten this down and then tighten all these bolts off, tighten down all these bolts, and then cut this right there. Sharp razor blade, cut that. Perfect. This front piece gets the same seal, but this is actually a slightly smaller gasket, and we just have to push this into here. So once everything is pushed in, we're actually gonna have to cut this at the same time, or just cut it and then super glue it together. Got this tiny little thing of crazy glue. Smush them together in one of these grooves, and that should hold them together. So that is actually extremely cool. It dried really fast, like probably less than a minute. Now the instruction recommends putting a little bit of black RTV around this just to protect where that seam is. I think it's gonna be fine, so I'm not gonna do that. But that is extremely cool. Custom O-ring, fit perfectly in there. Before the throttle body goes on, I just want to show you the inside of this. This is absolutely gorgeous, how smooth everything is. Throttle body is next, and it is this 95mm unit. And whenever you install something like this, there's multiple gaskets that you have to use, just because we have our throttle body, our throttle body, our first gasket, then we have our cable bracket, and then we have another gasket, and then the intake. And this thing looks absolutely amazing. I'm gonna go back and retorque all the bolts on the manifold, but it looks absolutely stunning. But now I can start attaching other stuff. So there's a couple sensors that need to go on here. Throttle position sensor, another one that goes right here. I'm not sure which one. And then throttle cable can be hooked up and distributor can be dropped in. So we're gonna do that now. Right, here's the little throttle cable we're using. It's 24 inches long, And this portion is actually a bit too long, so I had to add this part. But you gotta take that off to put that through the firewall. I was really debating whether going under the intake or over. We're just gonna go over. So I just turned the engine over to top dead center, and we're gonna drop this distributor in. And that was one of the main concerns because this firewall is a little tight and this intake sticks out quite a bit, and there's not that much of a gap. And as it looks like, the distributor does not fit in there. I did a test fit earlier, and what it is the transmission just needs to be jacked up, and then this will fall right in. Oh yeah, so much space. The idle air controller. This looks like it can go either way, up or down. I gotta look at the wiring harness to see which way is the best. But I did lube up the seal with a little bit of WD-40. Here is the throttle position sensor, and it looks like it needs a little bit of preload, so give it a little bit. And there is a couple other sensors that can go on now too, like our water temp. Probably the number one thing that needs to fit is this windshield wiper washer. Or not washer, wiper. Let's see. Oops, upside down. Just because I've had project cars without these, it just kind of sucks. All right, so it's been a couple days since I installed the intake. I've done a little bit more work to this, so I installed about half the front end, just so I can get this MSD box mounted and then figure out the lines or how long wires I need to run. The intake, I did install the fuel rails, but not the fuel injectors yet, just so that I could figure out how long these lines need to be. And here's the fuel pressure regulator just mounted right there on the fender. Actually really happy how that came out. But the core support is on and some of the coolers, so here's this separate Hayden cooler for the Gearstar 4L60, and then here's this other cooler for the power steering for our Borgeson steering box. But now I'm going to install the fuel injectors. These are 24-pound injectors. They're a little bit oversized if we were running this NA, but because we are running boost through this, this should be sized perfectly for this. And I never really talked about what you need to run a setup like this. So obviously we're going to need a computer, and to do that we're running the Holley Terminator X Max right there, and we're also controlling our transmission with the same thing. So the transmission is wired right now, but soon we're going to have to wire in the fuel injectors and all the sensors. And because we're running a Terminator X Max, you have to run a dual sync distributor. Now, looking at this, there isn't that much space for plug wires, so I might have to go with the older style and just go straight up and then come down. But we'll figure that out eventually. And when you run a dual sync, you have to run an MSD box, so that's why we have to have this installed here. And I'm just going to put a little bit of lube on all of these O-rings just so that they don't get cut up, and the install's a little bit easier. There we go. And for the fuel line in the back, we have just this piece right here. This uses Earl's Vapor Guard, a 3/8 hose with a barb fitting, so I got to put the clamp onto here. And then also on the end of these, it's just another AN6 to AN8 ORB. All right, so I just want to show you quickly the wiring harness that needs to go in this long boy right here. And these are the sensors that need to go through the firewall to the engine. There is actually a knock sensor here, which is kind of cool. Not necessary to wire, actually. So I was a little concerned when I saw that, but other things I might have to do is I might have to cut this up just to extend the fuel pressure one, but that should be fine. Biggest concern now is there is a hole in the firewall, but getting all this to fit through it. Not like I can reach over or anything. Maybe I should pull out the distributor Yeah, this truck was fun to work on until there was no more space in the engine bay. Now it's not fun to work on. Just, oh my goodness. Do I have to jack the transmission up to get the cap out? Are you serious? Seen some flaws. Maybe I should have put the wiring harness before I put this fuel rail in, because I can't really shove my hand in there and grab the wires. I'm trying to run them inside the intake, just so it looks a little bit cleaner. And then just because they end up right there. Now that actually took a ton of time to do. I was actually almost tempted to drill another hole in the firewall, but I was able to pinch everything through. So we're good. Now I'm going to start connecting some of these injectors, or some of these sensors. So thanks for watching this install, guys. Still a ton of work that I need to do on this S10. So I do need to build the exhaust. I need to finish making the fuel lines, put in a new fuel tank, put in the fuel pump. So tons of stuff before this thing is running, but hopefully you guys will see this thing running within the next month or two.